Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America, we bring the resource to you. The DU Podcast with your hosts, Chris Jennings and Dr. Mike Brazier.
Dr. Mike Brazier is joining me along with Andy Stetter, the supervisory wildlife biologist for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service at Aransas National Wildlife Refuge Complex. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Cool. Mike actually brought this to my attention today because he saw a Facebook post that you posted regarding a massive number of redheads in South Texas. Mike, can you explain kind of how you stumbled across that video?
Yeah, Andy, thanks for joining. It's good to have you on this. Good to connect back with you. I was just surfing through Facebook. Might have been yesterday or last night, I guess it was, and I saw your post, and it caught my attention because I think your comment was something of the effect of, maybe a quarter of the continental redhead population in this video or something. And I've spent some time down there on the coast, and I've seen large concentrations of redheads, these huge flocks as they get up off of that bay. But whatever I saw, the video that you posted, I was really, really impressed. So tell us a little bit about generally where you were and when that was. I know you took off some time here the past few days to go hunting with some friends. So what did you see with respect to redhead numbers down there?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So we were down at Port Mansfield, which is kind of halfway in between Corpus Christi and South Padre Island. And it's just south of the land cut. And this area is just really flat, shallow bays, full of grass. And I've read somewhere that it hosts about 85% of the continental redhead population during the winter. And this is my first time down there. I'm in Rockport, just up the coast, a couple hours. And last few years, I've seen quite a few rafts of redheads, 20,000 maybe, something like that, or, a couple thousand. And those were pretty impressive. Those are the most that I had seen. But having the opportunity to go down to Port Mansfield and see these huge flocks where, it's jaw-dropping.
It's dark in the sky.
It's literally like days, right? Like you hear about back in the old days where it's black in the sky, and you'd be sitting there on the edge of the hunting or whatever, and my buddy and I, Joe Marty, we're sitting there hunting, and I'm like, man, is that all those birds? And it just sounded like the waves crashing on the Gulf, or like a fan. It was just this constant buzz of the birds just feeding on the water and doing their thing. And then all of a sudden a boat would come flying by and kick them all up, and there'd just be this huge eruption of just a blackness, and all the way across the sky you just see this big long black line of redheads just flying, and you're just sitting there and it's like, man, how many birds do you think are in that? And I sent it to a couple buddies, and because I have a hard time, I estimate ducks for my job, and it's usually you're talking a couple hundred, couple thousand, like it's fairly easy. But when you're talking to this magnitude, it's pretty hard. And I sent it to a couple friends, and they're like, man, that's got to be like 200,000-300,000 birds. And when you talk about the continental estimate of redheads is 0.7 or 700,000 birds, and you're talking 200,000 to 300,000 in just one flock at the beginning of the season. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that is impressive. Do you think that's indicative of, just the time of year, or do you think it has something to do with these, cold fronts that have kind of been sweeping across the Central Plains, this week and even last week?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with that. I just went down there this past weekend to Port Mansfield, and that was my first time there. But even in Rockport, I've been out fishing quite a bit. I haven't really been out duck scouting a whole lot, but fishing, there hasn't been a whole lot of birds around until the last week or so with these two cold fronts that have kind of swept across, the Central Plains, and even up in the Midwest where I'm from in Wisconsin. They're starting to see ice on back lakes and ponds and stuff up there. And so I think, it's been a really good opener for at least the Texas coastal folk, and I'm sure inland as well. But there's been, those cold fronts have really helped push a lot of birds down for our opener this past weekend. And from what I've seen on social media, a lot of my buddies around the area did really well.
Cool. Yeah, you mentioned that you hunted last weekend as well, and what were the birds that you harvested? I mean, did you shoot any redheads, or was it kind of a mix?
We did shoot actually a real good mix. We shot our redheads every day. We didn't get any of the big flocks to come in, although it was a cool sight to see off on the horizon as you're hunting with these flocks of redheads bouncing back and forth. We had smaller groups of singles or doubles or 10, 20 come in and work right into the decoys. And then we also shot, I did shoot 2 greater scop and 2 lesser scop, and I did my master's on scop, so it's always special for me to shoot scop. And then we shot a couple spoonies, a couple pintails, teal, and I think that was it. So, but yeah, it was a good mixed bag. I know in Rockport they were shooting gadwall, teal, pintails, widgeon, some bufflehead, scop, redheads. So it's pretty good.
So by all accounts,
yeah, pretty good opener.
Yeah, by all accounts, it was a good opener. Well, good deal. Are you going to try to get back out here in the near future and give it another shot?
Yeah, pretty much for me, the weekends consist of what I like to call a cast and blast. That's pretty popular down here on the coast, and get out and duck hunt in the mornings and fish for redfish for me personally in the afternoons, and that's pretty much my whole fall, what I like to do.
Yeah, and from your social media posts, I can tell that you do pretty well in that regard. So kudos to you for availing yourself to the opportunities that you have. That's a phenomenal place that in your backyard.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, thanks for joining us, Andy, and keep us updated on those big flocks of redheads. We're always interested in that.
I'd like to go down there. A buddy of mine said January is the time to go see them when they're, when you really got that 85% of the population. And I think if you saw 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 birds in one flock down there, it'd be quite the sight to see.
Absolutely. That is cool. Well, it sounds like everybody in South Texas, especially along the coast, is started the season off pretty well. And as long as the weather continues to cooperate, I think the season will roll on. So appreciate you joining us, Andy. Thanks a lot.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to our special guest for today, Andy Stetter, for bringing us some useful insights on migration in South Texas. We also want to thank our wonderful producer, Clay Baird, who keeps us all straight. And most important, thanks to each of you, our listeners, for your interest, for your time, for your support of wetlands and waterfowl conservation.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the DU Podcast. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and visit www.ducks.org/DU Podcast for resources based on today's topics, as well as access to more episodes. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the Ducks.